Welcome. This is hopefully going to be the first episode of many episodes of this podcast that we are calling Trust the Process. We are two people. I am Josh. Hello. I am a nerd. You are
And
also
I'm
a
John.
nerd. Hello, John.
This is correct.
What is this podcast going to be about, John?
For the most part,
Yeah,
40k related topics.
40k
with
related.
a little bit of other nerdy related stuff here and there.
Why 40k? Do you like it or something?
Oh, just a little. It's kind of been an obsession for the last year.
I want you to sell me on it. Sell me on what Warhammer 40k is.
Well, it's a sci-fi universe where everyone hates everyone. There is only war. Everything sucks.
This sounds
But you know what?
Pretty metal.
It's pretty fucking cool.
It sounds pretty metal. And how do we engage?
It really is.
What do we do?
Well, for the most part, it's a miniature wargaming hobby that involves a lot of, honestly, let's be real, purchasing, as well as painting and playing in a tabletop setting.
That's
using
it.
one of the 30 different factions that exist.
Nail on the head. Yeah, this is a tabletop wargaming thing. This has been around for close to about 30 years, actually, from its original inception. And over time, the Warhammer 40,000 universe has just skyrocketed in what encompasses the universe. Hundreds of actual novels, hundreds of miniatures that have been released over the years. You've got your classic humans, elves, orcs, but in this awfully terrible science fiction setting. And you've probably had a weird uncle who was into it. You might have had a dorky friend in high school that tried to get you into it. You might like a really hot British actor who's into it. It's getting more and more popular. And this podcast is coming out around about the time of a very successful video game release called Space Marine 2. And even we have met people in our local gaming store where you go in and spend too much money on this little plastic figurines, just buying this stuff because they played the game, right? It's kind of crazy just how as the years go by, things like Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, all that just gets more and more popular. But I would say that it's actually a lot more accepted, dare I say, because of its artistic merit. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I never thought that I would be an artistic kind of person, but this hobby has really taught me a lot about painting and color theory and all those things that come along with the hobby itself.
That's it.
But yeah, nerd culture's at an all-time high, right?
Oh yeah. The profit margins in this company is insane. But that's it. It's very artistic at its core. Most people who actually get into this hobby don't really play it as often as they would like. In fact, they spend more time actually collecting these various armies that are quite small. You buy the kits that you think are cool. You actually put them together yourself, kind of like a 3D figurine made from Lego bits. You paint it yourself however you want to. And then maybe you have a few friends that are into it. You put it all together, and there are actual genuine rules to playing a game with them. It sounds insane. The Warhammer creators sold you on an idea and basically made you buy all the parts of the game. Normally you buy the game and then you get into the lore, but this is one of those few instances where you get into the lore and then you go and buy the game, right?
Yeah, and especially as we said, the release of Space Marine 2's introduced so many extra people to the world of 40k and the setting, and they're just starting to dip their toes into just how much lore is out there.
An insane amount of lore. And there's definitely people who are just into this hobby because of the lore. There is lots of very well-written novels. There is lots of increasingly higher quality video games. There is a lot of tutorials on YouTube and Instagram teaching you how to just paint, and people put those things on the shelf and call it there, having never played a game. Some people pay people to paint their minis and then go and play in competitive tournaments because the game actually does have a competitive sense of balance. It's quite enjoyable to be a part of this, no matter what you're interested in, whether you want to read about these crazy stories, play the video games with mates, or just play a fun little board game on the weekends. What
Or in our
got you
case,
into it? How long have
Tuesdays.
you, on our case, Tuesdays, but what got you into it? What was the point that really hooked you in to this hobby?
Oh man, it probably goes back to the early to mid 2000s with the release of the Dawn of War
Early to
video
mid
games being an
2000s.
RTS setting, and originally playing through like the RTS setting of that, and really got a hold of the identity of one of the factions, the Necrons.
Oh yeah. So you got
But then
into it
obviously
through
growing
video
up and
games.
being like, yeah, and then was always adjacent to the hobby, knew about it, had friends who were invested, but couldn't really invest myself or get started, and then you came along.
I was always around. Well,
Yeah, but you gave me the okay I needed to splurge.
I allowed you to
The
spend
friend
all the
to
money
jump
you had set aside for other things in life.
and some.
Me, video games did capitalize on an initial investment into the hobby, but it wasn't until I went into like a really big toy store, which had a model, like a hobby model section, which you had, your classic World War II tanks, soldiers, the diorama trains, all the real dorky stuff, reality. And this guy
The
really,
fun stuff.
this guy really sold me on this hobby. I was maybe 11 years old, 12 years old. I spent all of my birthday money, all of my Christmas money on a starter set, but I only had my neighbor to play with. And we had no idea how to actually play the game. It was a bit complicated, a bit vague in its rulings, but the models were cool. It was fun to paint, even though we weren't very good. But it was just so damn expensive that it wasn't until almost a decade later in my early 20s that I actually got back into it. Sort of around this heightened zeitgeist of, you see it everywhere on Reddit, Instagram, YouTube. There's just so much out there. This will be one little drop in a very wide pond of people creating stuff inspired by this particular universe and multi-aspect hobby. But that leads me to sort of clarify what I want to do with the podcast, which is be relatively jack of all trades, a bit casual, a bit introductory. We want to do, pretty frequent episodes around the actual day-to-day aspects of the hobby, the playing, the building, the painting, just chatting for the most part, but hopefully guiding you in some aspects, which leads me to the topic of our initial episodes here, which is what the heck do we play, right? As you mentioned, there's just about 30 factions in the game. If you've played Space Marine video game, you'll know at least 3 of them, right? Space Marines, the weird bugs, and the bad guys. Right? But there's so much more than that. And if you were to walk into a Warhammer store, you would see so many things. And not just for Warhammer 40k, but other games like a Warhammer Fantasy, for example. Today we're just going to talk about that science fiction, the Warhammer 40,000. And I came up with an idea which I'm calling the slag method. And the slag method, this is so you can play along at home. What we're going to do is give a rough outline of 4 components. And then we're going to give our rankings of those components and see overall, how much we like an army. And we're going to go off of 4 categories. S representing the style of the army, where I want to explain to people what the sort of the visual and thematic inspiration is for this faction. The L in slag standing for the lore. What sort of storyline can you pull from for inspiration? What is the overall history throughout the setting? Are there any particular novels that have really anchored them? A for accessibility, which is a pretty wide topic. What models can you buy? Is there a lot of them to buy? How much do I realistically need to spend to begin playing them? Could I 3D print them, etc.? And then G, gameplay. How do they play, right? And I think these 4 key areas representing the slag method is a pretty easy to determine stat sheet, if you will. You can sort of see which ones you like based off these categories. If you want to get a bit more of an in-depth look at them, go find other YouTubers. Go find the YouTubers like Play on Tabletop who play the game quite a lot. Find the lore podcasts who really dive into these factions. Find the painters who actually do whole videos on painting these armies. Whatever seems interesting for you, we're the tipping off point, I guess. That's what I want this to be at first. But you made it a lot more succinct than I did, I believe, when we were talking about this idea. How did you put it?
I sure did. So the way I kind of defined it and really pushed also into how I made decisions on how I would rate them is the style is how does it look? Being, what does it look like? Does it seem thematic? Things like that. The lore is, are they cool? Do they do cool things? Are there good stories out there? Do they have a unique theme or something like that? Accessibility is the range of models. Like, is it easy to collect? Do you need a lot of them? Can you get away with a few? And also, like, are there any bordering issues in trying to collect them? And then gameplay is just, is it fun? What's the cool thing that they do?
Yeah, I want to really point out a sort of a slogan that I've been really trying to put to our game group, which is to remember that models are forever, rules are temporary. This game changes.
Yeah, I mean, they're on their 10th edition of this game, right?
This game changes its rule base every few years. It tends to go sideways rather than completely reinvent the wheel. But even so, what feels good to play now can change. What feels bad to play can change. All it takes is a simple PDF update that they come out with a bit randomly, I must admit. There's always going to be new models. There's always going to be more stories. But we want to also basically paint them in the current light. Where are they right now? Remembering that everything does work. There is a competitive balance to the game, but there will always be your sort of sweaty players that will try and min-max what is the strongest units they have and just chuck them at you. You don't want those friends. We're just going to go for sort of a casual gloss over everything and essentially just give you a little introductory window. I bet you know what I want to start with, though.
Yeah, it's going to be the Imperium.
Yes, today's episode will be on the Imperium of Man. So to quickly paint the scene,
the faction of human.
To paint the scene, the Imperium is humanity. In this setting, humanity is gone backwards. They have their little toes in every part of the galaxy. They are not too far away from where we are in modern times. They do have some technology that's quite advanced, but it's limited. The bread and butter of humanity is still your everyday soldier and citizen. However, the humanity in this universe has backslided into this religious zealotry. So it's a very terrible place to live if you are the common citizenry, which is going to really, set the scene for some of the factions you can play. But because they are humans, despite how, awful everything is for them, humans are very easy to relate to. And so all your humans and human adjacent factions is going to be the most popular factions to play, the most models you can acquire, and what you'll typically see in the external media like books and games. But I want to start with Space Marines because, quite frankly, there are a lot of them. They are the poster boys. You see them on promotional material, the biggest, newest, hottest video games. You see most of the new models that get released might have a Space Marine involved. So for Space Marines, what is their style? Would you like to take the stage here? Would you like to pitch me on the style of Space Marines?
The style of your Codex-adherent Space Marines is very much like jack of all trades, master of none. They can do everything and anything that you expect to be able to do in the game without anything super over the top. They tend to be very tactical and very mindful with a little bit of an elite gameplay or feel to them. Like, they are super soldiers of the Imperium after all. They're not just your regular humans, and they are in limited numbers.
Yeah.
Each of the different chapters or like sub-factions of it do exemplify certain traits, but they also exemplify certain cultures of mankind in the current era and past eras as well, brought out in an extreme manner.
Mm.
For instance, like the White Scars being Mongolian inspiration with a very big cultural drive. And you see it in both the narrative, the gameplay, and the way that they are expressed.
There's one good thing about Space Marines is that they have a pretty thorough through line. Being so dominated by representation, you're never going to feel like you're underrepresented. There's always going to be models to buy. There's always going to be like flashy rules up front to play with because they are the poster faction. They are elite and genetically modified individuals. They are not exactly humans. They are implanted with all these combat organs and equipped with very powerful sets of power armor and heavy weaponry. They get sent out to go and fight the worst battles in this horrible galaxy, against alien factions, demonic factions, traitorous factions, just lots of hardcore stuff. They have essentially been power scaled up over the editions. They've kind of become a one-man army, and in some instances, that's very much the style of the Space Marines is to be able to conquer a planet with just a handful of people, just very much commando-like units. And
yeah, they're shock troops.
Yeah, this has always been the case with their lore. Their lore dates back into a sort of a side setting known as the Horus Heresy, which predates the Warhammer 40,000 setting. The Horus Heresy was set in the rough year of 30,000 compared to 40,000, where the Space Marines were much larger in number. They were much more coherent, a lot more atheistic, if you will, as a sign of the times. And a few of the remaining legions of Space Marines from that time still exist in this modern 40k setting. You have a few very popular original boys. You have the Ultramarines, they're the blue ones. That's what you'll see in the Space Marine video game. They really are that jack of all trades you mentioned. They are the Swiss Army knife, very high levels of discipline, very much change tactics on a dime. You have other factions that might represent something a bit more sneaky, such as the Raven Guard, a black-clad, lighter armored force, or the Iron Hands, which are sort of a metallic, a bit more cybernetic aesthetic to their force. Lots of vehicles. You mentioned the White Scars, this sort of Mongolian biker and hypermobile chapter. But you can always actually just create your own sort of vibe. You aren't limited to these people. You can pick up Space Marines and paint them bright pink if you wanted to and call them the Kitty Boys. No one really cares. You don't have to stick to the lore. You can do your own thing, but there is so much there to actually base off of, if you will.
Build upon.
Which takes us to their models. Do you want to make any comments about their models?
Oh man, you'll very quickly learn that the Imperium isn't my play toy, but
starting off well.
Their models they're fine. They're fine. They're very basic, they're very tactical, they're very exactly what you would expect out of a human super soldier. They're very military.
Very military, very easy to determine who's who and what does what. You can see that guy has a sword, that guy has a missile launcher. Very easy to tell them apart. And every edition of the game brings a whole new wave of Space Marines. Around about the 8th edition of the game, so close-ish to a decade ago, the setting had a really big shakeup. The storyline was always sort of kept at this doomsday clock, couple of minutes to midnight setting for the entire existence of the game beforehand. But around the 7th and 8th edition, the storyline moved forward. That's around about when a lot of other factions were added to the game. A lot of people actually got involved because the narrative was advancing. It was also a fantastic opportunity for them to make even more Space Marines. And every edition since has added new themes of Space Marines. The 8th edition introduced what's known as Phobos units. They are lighter armored, more sneaky, tactical guys. The Ninth edition introduced this knightly aesthetic with the Blade Guard models, lots of sword and board models. The newest edition of the game, which released last year, re-sculpted some of the classic models from the earliest days of the hobbies, which is the big, bulky Terminator Space Marines, which are fan favorites. But even so, there are so many of these, you can still buy pretty much everything. They are the most well-stocked army in the game, I would say. And most of those unique original chapters, the Ultramarines, Raven Guard, White Scars, they even have unique characters if you really wanted to build a force off of them. And the gameplay, the gameplay itself also really focuses around the various chapters of Space Marines. How do you feel about detachments? Do you want to explain detachments real quick?
Oh man, you're talking to the wrong person when it comes to what their detachments are all about, but each one tends to focus
in general, right?
on... Okay, so detachments in general. So each detachment is meant to be a themed way to play and collect the army, focusing around a certain either gameplay style or a faction within the game. So in previous editions, you were locked behind certain models and certain things based completely on the color scheme you chose and the rules you wanted to play, whereas 10th edition has really opened it up to allow you to kind of do whatever you want and still have the color scheme and theme that you personally want.
Are you telling me that I can make my bright pink Hello Kitty Marines be the sneaky ones?
Sure can, if that's what you want to do.
Neat.
And more for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely, you'll notice with some of the bigger codexes, like Codex Astartes, Chaos Space Marines, each of the detachments is themed around like a certain chapter of this army or a certain sub-faction.
Sorry, what's a codex?
The codex is their rules, and
they release them all at
everything
once, right?
you need. Oh, if only. No, they stagger them out throughout the entire edition, and sometimes you get lucky and you get released early, and sometimes you're the last one and you get 6 months of playtime before the new rules come out.
Yeah, so at present, a lot of Imperium factions actually do have a codex. This codex has a nice lore section, a nice model gallery section, but also, these detachments, the stat sheets for the general units. All general units can be taken in any detachment. Detachments just tend to, as you point out, really hone them into a certain way. When you play this game, detachments offer essentially abilities and unique equipment that you can take with you into an actual tabletop game. And depending on what models you have, you might be a bit more suited to one detachment over another. It kind of rewards this flavor of army that you run with. For example, the basic form of Space Marines is known as the Gladius Task Force. This allows you to sort of assess the battlefield, whether your opponent is surrounding you or they have a few more elite units. You can basically pick and choose what ability you want to go with to deal with what's against you. Whereas other detachments may include the Anvil Siege Force, I believe it's called, which is essentially gunline. All of your gun guys shoot harder compared to, say, the Iron Storm detachment, which is very vehicular focused. A lot of your vehicles will hit better. And there's a few others, but you get the gist of it. Some are sneaky, some are more close quarter, some a bit more elite. And these various attachments allow you to choose your play style. But they're, at the end of the day, all Space Marines. They all do the pretty same stuff. But if you wanted to read a book about Space Marines, there's so many. Take your pick. I would recommend the Dawn of Fire series, as that's the most present narrative, and you get a lot of different flavors of Space Marines. Yeah. Shall we wrap up Space Marines there? Totally don't have any more Space Marines, right?
Oh man, we still have plenty, but we do need to go through our slag ratings still.
Our slag ratings. So I hope you're playing along at home. I should have mentioned the metric we're using. I'm just going off of a 5-point per category thing. So 5 for style, 5 for lore, accessibility, gameplay, etc. And then giving them a final score. What'd you get?
Well, for a lot of my ratings, they're going to be very much personal taste more than anything.
Mhm.
So where Josh might be a bit more fair, I'm definitely going to be a little bit more skewed towards what's cool, what's not, what feels a little more bland to me. So for Codex
you're using
Astartes,
1 as a baseline, whereas I'm using 3 as a baseline, going down if I think they suck.
essentially.
Yeah, okay.
Although I will say, like, there's definitely 3 being kind of like you're gonna have a good time with this. They have a lot of stuff, they do this sort of thing. But I probably have a lot more 1s and 2s than you probably run as well. My critique might be a little more harsh, skewed.
Yeah,
But
I'm
for
generally
Codex
quite
Astartes, I've
optimistic.
given them 2 style, just because they are very basic.
Okay.
They do have a large range, so some of their models are better than others. They have so many cool epic heroes and character models that there was no way they were going to get anything lower, because they do have a lot of cool stuff.
Sure.
For lore, I've again given them a 2, because there's such an abundance of lore. Like, a place to start can be hard to find sometimes. They do have some very cool, like, rivalries and brotherhood between the different factions, but for the most part, their lore is the lore of humans. For accessibility, I did give them a 3, being that they are the greatest range in the entire game. They have something for everything. The only reason I've given them a 3 instead of going higher is due to the constant model release can border on obnoxious and FOMO driven as well sometimes, due to like short ranges at the beginning of a release, things that might not be in stock for a year afterwards, just because there's that high demand, you know?
That's a very good point.
And then for G, I've given them a 2. They don't do anything interesting or unique, but they can do everything.
Yeah. Very beginner
at the same time,
friendly.
I think the divergent chapters, when we get to those, are far more engaging and thematic.
Yeah.
So that gives them a total of 9 for me, which
Total of 9.
sounds low when the score's out of 20, but that's your average, right?
Yeah, I hear that. I was a bit more positive on them, but I still am not their biggest fan. I think the style is fine. I landed on 3. It's what got me into the hobby, so there's obviously, enough there to really bring people in. The style is so easy to digest.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a fan of things like Fallout, Iron Man, even like things like Terminator, stuff like that, you're going to look at this, you're going to understand what they are. You're going to be able to see all the different styles of them and think, cool, I like those ones, I like these ones. And you'll be able to find your niche pretty quickly. So I think whilst they are pretty overdone stylistically, I'll give them a 3. For the lore, I gave them another 3. This is my baseline is 3. I find them quite hit and miss. I've listened to a lot of the audiobooks. I find some writers take them very generically. There's a lot of brother this and brother that and buy the chapter and die alien. And that's kind of it. Insert battle scene. But then you have some chapters who have like curses upon them, or they throw themselves to defend like a human world, even though it's obviously going to end badly for them. And it's very gritty and engaging. But the pendulum swings so far between those two sort of cool, engaging narratives versus very bland, drab, basic, vanilla latte stories, For accessibility, I want to rate them higher. I gave them a 4 just because of how many options it does give you. If you're someone who's really able to digest this wide, selection range and find where you want to go, you'll have a blast, honestly. You'll have so many options to choose from, which if you like that, great. But for gameplay, I did rank them actually at a 2. Yeah. I thought that whilst they are very easy to digest, and if they're going off beginner, maybe a 3. But overall, you're going to play these guys, maybe see what other armies can do, and you're going to think, oh man, why can't I do that? All I got is slightly higher, armor save. That's kind of it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
you compare them to the gameplay setting, and you find them a little lackluster.
Yeah, you play the video games, you're like, oh my god, I'm God. And they are, but to be balanced in a game perspective, not as much. Anyway, this leads us on to a very long, winding road of Space Marine successor chapters, or not successor, I used the wrong word, but they're unique enough to have their own supplement to the core Space Marine rulebook. These are predominantly your original legions beside the ones we said that have just held on to their identity so hardcore that your fans, your model sculptors, even your rules have got enough there to become their own thing. And I think that's pretty cool. We have first up.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Dark Angels. Do you want to give us the spiel on Dark Angels?
Dark Angels are your monastic vibe, lots of cloth accents. They herald from a very lush world. They're very focused on like plasma weapons and power weapons and stuff like that, and they're just kind of like your really knightly group. Obviously, they've had some very recent new sculpts, and we have 2 people in our play group who are looking to play Dark Angels just due to how cool the models look, and it'll reflect in the ratings as well.
That's it. Yeah. You basically hit the nail on the head for the style. I added that they're quite gothic. They really love their swords and sort of old world, kind of medieval detailing. They do go around with vehicles and guns and whatnot, but a lot of their unique units are literally called knights. So that paints a picture. But they are very much shrouded in ritual and mystery. And it's noticeable in their visual style. A lot of their characters might have like fabric hoods that go over their Space Marine helmets. The lore really examines this sort of mystery quite well. They were the first ever Space Marines to be essentially deployed upon the galaxy. They were built up around a leader, like the Space Marine chapters, they have a sort of a primogenitor figure, a demigod, if you will, from which they all sort of genetically are descended from. But the genetic descendants is like genetic modification, if that makes sense. You take a normal human and juice them up. But their primogenitor, who's known as the Lion, came from a sort of a night world. Lots of great beasts, night houses, and these old world clans over the course of hundreds of years started to just, splinter apart with their loyalties. They didn't really want to join in the greater galaxy. They wanted to stay in their castles and just go hunt great beasts. And eventually this led to a sort of a schism. Like half the Dark Angels turned on the other half. And fast forward tens of thousands, fast forward 10,000 years, there is the sort of the loyal good Dark Angels that are so riddled with shame that they are very hard for other factions to work with within the setting, because they're very paranoid that they're being duped. They will interrogate witnesses of their traitorous brethren. They're just really hard to deal with. And I think that's quite fun that there's so much sort of shame and guilt, despite them being so powerful and cool. There's a pain there, and I think that's really cool compared to let's go fight the aliens. But despite them having some new models, go on.
It's kind of like they got taken down a peg, and now they're trying to recover.
That's it. But despite them having some new models, they've actually been in the game since its inception. Unfortunately, with there being now 30-ish factions in the game, you have to really focus your efforts when it comes to sculpting models and producing models. Unfortunately, this has led to them losing a bit of flavor. A lot of their older armies, before the game really blew up in popularity, had a lot of these sort of gothic detailings we mentioned applied to things such as vehicles, their generic line troops, their characters even, and their new army supplement for this now 10th edition had 2 units. 2 units, and they lost quite a number of those older fan favorite models. Just lack of support from a rules perspective. And this is actually quite reflected in their gameplay. They have a few detachments that focuses around what they always sort of did. The rules are never going to change so much from edition to edition. Just how the army interacts with the core mechanics of the game might change. So for the Dark Angels, they really focus around one of a couple of different styles, but I call them like Space Marines Plus. They're just objectively better than the other Space Marines. And you see that in tournament settings too, which is a bit unfortunate. The Space Marine Dark Angels really like to hold on to the objectives. They really like to pass all their morale tests. They like to shoot you back if you shoot them. And then a couple of their other styles of gameplay, their detachments, focuses around these models that just lack support, with their range not being fully brought into the new edition. You have some of their flying units just no longer available to be purchased, yet there's a whole detachment around them. So that is not a great sign, but the lore is just very cool. Do you want to jump into ratings? Or do you have anything else to add to it?
No, you've done pretty much everything.
Thank you.
Their style I gave them, like, that's definitely up from Space Marines, because I do think that a lot of the vibe and feel of this like knightly order is very thematic and cool. And damn, is the Lion a cool model? That dude is sick.
Yeah, he came back.
He came back in style.
Yeah.
For lore, I've given a 3. Again, like higher than Space Marines, but it is still very typical and exactly what you'd expect from that theme. Like, you can really see what you're getting into. If you know anything about like medieval fantasy, you're probably very close to the nail on the head, just with a sci-fi twist. For accessibility, I've given them a 3, similar to Space Marines, as you said. They don't have a lot of their model range from older editions, and you kind of have like 3 or 4 kits, and then the rest is just Space Marines.
They do have
like,
access
there's
to
just
the
not
core
enough.
Range.
Yeah, exactly. It's just all Space Marines.
Yeah, all these
and then for gameplay, I gave
a build off the base. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, for gameplay, I gave them a 3. It's a slight boost up. Their detachments are thematic. They can really focus on like the unique models, but as you said, there's just not enough models to support a lot of their detachments. So even in the competitive space, people are using Gladius from the generic Space Marine Codex to field their Dark Angels.
Yep, it's quite entertaining to see.
This gives a total of 13. So definitely up from Space Marines, but mainly because of the theme and the vibes.
You and I had the same score. Them a 5 for style. I think they are the like coolest, even though it's quite edgy, like coolest, edgiest Space Marine guys. I love the detailing. It really sets them up, really ties them into this sort of grim, dark universe. However, I did make
for sure.
I thought they're just, they're cool, but they're so like paranoid and depressed at themselves. Even their leader, Iron, comes back and was like, "What are you doing? Get over yourselves," And it's hard for me to really want to connect with this really down on themselves guys, even though they're so cool. This was followed up by a 3 and a 3. I'm really negged on their missing range, but they have access to everything else. So it's hard to be like too mad with how much there is. You just paint them as Dark Angels and voila, you have Dark Angels. But for the gameplay...
it's definitely how I...
Yeah, gameplay 3, they're just retooled normal Marines. Although it would be cool to play the old style of Dark Angels with the fun like vehicles and some of the other unique characters that they once had. But maybe next edition. Brilliant. This is going to tie us into another of these other Space Marine groups. Are you noticing a theme when I call these guys Blood Angels?
Yes.
Would you believe me if I told
the cannibals with apps.
Would you believe me if I told you that the generic line trooper in this setting calls Space Marines Angels of Death? It might have something to do with these guys.
It just might.
Prime us on Blood Angels, Johnny.
Man, I can't get behind this faction. I really can't.
Really? You can't get behind
I understand
these
what some people. It's that Soviet, that like Slovenic vampire theme, right? Like the Space Marines in general have the ability to kind of get to know some information when they eat the flesh of their enemies, and the Blood Angels take that to the extreme with ritualistic like cannibalism and eating Xenos races and anything that they defeat. And partially to go along with this, they have a mutation within their genes that causes them to have what they call the blood rage, where they just lose control and just go on a murder hobo spree.
It's Black Rage.
Oh, Black Rage, Blood Rage. It's all related.
It's not a political.
It's all Blood Angels, alright? I just can't get behind the vampiric emos.
I actually quite like the vampiric emos for, the reason that the opposite reason to why I dislike the Dark Angels from a narrative perspective. The Blood Angels, from a lore perspective, they are like psychos. They always were psychos. Before their like primogenitor demigod guy came about, they were unhinged, like even more cannibalistic. But then they were kind of like tamed by their leader into these extremely loyal defenders of humanity. But they are cursed, and they fight with such zeal. It's almost like they're throwing themselves to their death to save humanity. And if they don't have to deal with the curse because they died in battle, yay! But if they manage to live through these battles, they're going to need like blood cleansing. Like they get stuffed in coffins because their blood's just not good, And they do have that black rage because eventually, in a really bad time of these guys' histories, their leader died. And when their leader died, this sort of psychic feedback, like cursed, magic's not real though, cursed all of the Blood Angels, both the ones that were there and the ones that weren't even around yet. Just that genetic markers of being a Blood Angel opens you up to the Black Rage, where you sort of are in this psychosis, experiencing their leader Sanguinius's final moments, and you can't come back from this psychotic brink. So you have these generic Blood Angels. Some of them like to have wings. They're masters of the aerial assault. Some of these guys are just around doing their thing, fighting and whatnot. And then like Brother Ronaldo over there is like cursing his head off and is frothing at the mouth because he's fighting for his life, or so he thinks. And then you have throughout the battlefield these spiritual leaders being like, no, get back here. Like, calm yourself, buddy. And I think that's just a really fun concept, that they're so zany for Space Marines. Like, they're a lost cause, yet they're one of the most like, we're going to defend the humans, right?
They're also very good in the community as well. Like, a lot of people love their Blood Angels.
Yeah, they are pretty cool. From a visual style, they're bright red, they're adorned with chalices, like winged emblems, iron halos. They wield a lot of chain swords and normal swords. These guys quite literally represent angels. They have a bit of a saintly appearance to them. And they did get, like the Dark Angels, some new models. A lot of character models. They have a lot of cool guys, but they did lose a few of their more unique sculpts. Noticing a theme this edition, they lost a couple of their more cool like vehicular models, but the core like infantry and characters still stick around. But oh my god, have you seen their rules?
Oh, I haven't yet, no.
That pause, I was like, is he reading them right now? So,
No, I definitely haven't seen them yet.
Well, Dark Angels were like Space Marines Plus. These guys seem to have been written with a lot more like a unique style in mind. They have a few different detachments, but they all seem to focus around like getting really close to your opponent and just like fighting until they die, which is actually very like flavorful. Their core detachment, known as the Liberator Group, essentially they get bonuses to charge into their opponents And if they do that, they get extra attacks that are even stronger. They are overwhelming aggression and melee, and they just stay in the fight with abilities to shrug off damage. And if they allow themselves to fail battle shock stuff, which is morale in this game, they actually get stronger in melee. You then have the Lost Brethren, which is this black rage death company of blood angels, which gets to just like re-roll any missed attacks they have because they're so focused on like fighting for their lives in this psychosis state that anyone in front of them's going down. Like even if they die on an objective, they have an ability to die like on the objective. That's their objective. You're welcome. You're not taking it from us. That's like ours forever. And then you also have like an aerial assault detachment, if you like guys with jetpacks. But that
Who doesn't love guys with jetpacks?
That's their playstyle. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and you know, you've sold me on them a little bit, but I'm not going to change my ratings.
Okay, that's fine.
And that comes down to personal taste.
That's fine.
Beginning.
You don't like cannibals, I understand.
It's just, oh man, I can't get past the weird abs in their power armor, the muscle striated armor, the
nipples,
the black rage, just complete. Yeah, they got rid of the nipples.
Oh. They're like Roman statues.
Yeah,
with their nipples and muscles.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a look.
Yeah,
but all I've given them an 8, which comes down to the 1 for style and lore for me, and again that is completely my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then I've given them a 3 for accessibility and for gameplay. Again, they're Space Marines. They have a couple of models plus the Space Marine range. I do think that the heavy assault gameplay is more interesting and is a different way to take it as opposed to like the very shooty army that Space Marines can be.
Yeah, I liked them a whole lot more than I was expecting to, if I'm being honest.
Yep.
I looked at my ratings and thought, they've been playing the wrong army this whole game. I don't find them as visually cool as the Dark Angels, even though red is my favorite color ever. I just think they don't have as much of that like visual identity outside of their characters. The lore is very compelling to me, but I have read one of their books, which is The Devastation of Baal, wherein like them and all of their friends almost died to the man fighting off aliens, and they drew them to their planet so that they wouldn't go somewhere else. And like, you know, like, who'd do that? Those guys, they're cool. Their characters are great. They're all a little cursed, which is fun. And I'm really into this whole like this sort of risk reward in melee, like just getting into the bloody fight. It's quite fun sounding, like the whole, you know, I'm going down, but you're coming with me. So 4s all around. I gave them a 16.
Nice.
I forgot to give a book recommendation for Dark Angels. Lion, Son of the Forest. It really shows this turning point in their lore. It has very compelling characters, and really delves into the mindset of their like demigod. They're called Primarchs. I should give them their actual name. Their Primarch, who was named the Lion. It's just very good book. Say less. You can read it yourself. I did want to point out that turns out podcast episodes go longer than I thought. We may have to do a couple more of the Space Marines and just have this be Space Marine episode.
For sure, we can come back to the rest of the Imperium next time. But we do have 2 more Divergent chapters to get through.
Well, if you want to be picky about it, there's actually more, but we will go through the 2 you said.
Expect Codex supplements.
Which is a great place. You know, we might be talking about Space Marines a lot, but it's really important for new people, I think, to understand the difference between them. Because even in gameplay, you're not going to be able to buy Blood Angels Commander I Drink Blood Man and then run them with Dark Angels Knights. Like you can't do that. And I think that's a very clear distinction, and being able to figure out where you want to go with your collection is very important. But speaking of really loyal players and their unique collections. Do you want to talk about Space Wolves?
Man, Space Wolves to me are what Blood Angels are to you, dude. Like, I think the
Really?
more that I read about them, honestly, like, the more I read about them, the cooler they are.
They're hilarious to me.
The
I
idea
don't like
of
them.
this, like, very Norse chapter, like, super memey. They had to develop a poison that they could get drunk on because they're
They did
superhumans
that.
who can't get drunk on alcohol, and like the in-game mechanics of the epics is really thematic and story driven, being able to like unlock upgrades based on what you do in game.
Mhm.
The idea of space marine assassins, like a group that would design specifically to deal with problem space marine chapters,
Mhm.
I think is really cool and really comes across in the lore with some of the things that they do during like the Horus Heresy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And their Primarch being very active in the Horus Heresy and one of the higher kill streaks.
What a Chad, that guy.
And frankly, like their models are, we won't talk about the Wolven, but outside of the Wolven, who we will hopefully get a new model for, their unique models are really cool with all the furs and pelts and very thematic. I dig Space Wolves.
Wolves in your Space Marine army? Did you watch Game of Thrones and thought dire wolves are sick? Do you want to put them in your Space Marine army? Well, you can. Play Space Wolves.
Man, and the more I look, the cooler they are, and they're like a light blue, very icy looking color scheme. Like, it all just tells a story.
Yeah, I love their sort of Space Norse language they kind of go by, because in their own tongue they call themselves the Vulka Fenrika, which, I don't know, that's enough to convert me until I look at wolves.
Wolves of Fenra.
Yeah, but imagine like, I'm the Vulka Fenrika, and you're like, I'm in.
Yeah, very much.
The more I read about them, the more I loved their characters. Like they are just Vikings. They come from this feral world. They're essentially these bestial humans that had to like be taught manners because they were basically like wolf people. They're all adorned in fur pelts, feral talismans. They have their wolf that some of them even ride into battle. They kind of have a Norse mythology. Yep. They kind of reject established norms. They have mead halls. They love like runes and spells, even though that's not what it is. They call it spells and runes. So, they really fall into that old world Viking, just barbarians through and through, very proud warriors. You already mentioned the executioner aspect of their role. They really don't play well with others, which I find hilarious. They'll join a battlefield and like another Imperium commander will be like, "Oi, can you like do this thing?" And like, "You there speak to the wolves of Fenris, we do our own thing, wolf out." Hilarious names though. Wolf here, wolf there. They definitely have a translation issue, I think. But their characters are very fun. They all have massive like wins on their opponents. Like, the characters almost convince me on Space Wolves. You have their chapter master, Logan Grimnar, aka Santa Claus. He's old, man. He's also huge. He gets carted around in a gravitically like elevated chariot pulled by dire wolves. He beat a chaos demon champion into submission, then had like his dude, his buddy, just in his garage knock him into the shape of an axe. And then like when the secret police were like, "I don't know about demon stuff," he's like, "F off, I've got this," and just kept going around being a Chad. Like, what is that Chad, And then like their other characters are just as fun.
Hey man,
you got Ragnar Blackmane. Do you know about this guy?
Little bit here and there, yeah.
Dude is Young Wolf. I think that's like one of his many wolf names. He's like, he and his company are the masters of planetary assaults. They first one's in, last one's out. He killed Gazkul Thraka, like just straight up beheaded him. Just one of Gazgul's many orc warlord, for those who don't know. Huge guy. Awfully powerful orc. Unfortunately, Ragnar had his neck snapped, his heart's exploded, etc. He then decided to get better. He had a life-changing surgery that revived him.
Okay.
He then went back to the planet to fight him again because Gazgul also decided to just get better. But Gazgul unfortunately killed Ragnar's wolves. He John Wicked them. That didn't really stop him though. He kept fighting.
No.
He did. He killed his wolves. And so Ragnar is now just on this like perpetual quest to just go kill him again.
Revenge quests.
They have like rune priest Njal Stormcaller, who is like a freaky wizard. He cast a blizzard, like he made weather so fierce that it turned a greater demon into bits. The bits then went onto the icy wind so hard he went back into hell. You know, like who is? Then there's like wolf priest Ulrich. His name's Ulrich the Slayer. He fought world eaters who are evil chaos corrupted space marines that are absolute chads in close quarter melee fights. Ulrich the Slayer fought multiple of them and won. Their world eaters like demigod primarch Angry Ron was like, you know what, you're a G, I'll let you live. Like my brain can't compute how epic these guys are.
Oh man, and that's why they have epics, right?
Yeah, that's their whole gameplay, right? Complete side objectives in the game to be stronger. They snowball in strength. And with a bunch of wolves, you can move them in such ways around the battlefield that you can limit what your opponent is able to actually do because they're now in wolf jail. And you just go complete your saga and then snowball. Like, pretty cool, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Model range sucks, so they haven't had.
So jumping back to our slag method.
Yeah, I got carried away there.
You sure did, but it's what we're here for, right?
Go for it.
For Space Wolves, I've given them a total of a 16. It's
16.
The highest of any of the Space Marine chapters. I've given them a 5 for their style, just because the models have lots of embellishments. The stories are cool, and yeah, like their theme is just really on point. Their lore, I've given them a 4. Again, as we discussed, like how can you go wrong with that lore, right?
Yeah.
I've given their accessibility a 4. It's all the benefits of being in Astartes with some really nice character sculpts and some really nice like infantry sculpts as well to mix it up. You can always tell a Space Wars player when they're on the table.
Oh yeah.
And then for gameplay, I gave them a 3, mainly because it's like they're still Astartes. They still play a similar method, but I think that the epics really help drive a story mechanic, and I was so close to giving them a 4.
Okay, yeah, you're a big fan of story mechanics.
I am.
Well, I gave their style a 2. I just don't care for it. I think it's fine, though. I would love to see like a whole custom created army on the battlefield. That'd be cool. But for their lore, I did give them a 4. I think the whole like wolf, how iced fang of Great Wolfman naming conventions and the like, it's a bit obnoxious. But their characters are so cool.
It is.
But they have so many characters and unique infantry from like old as edition of the game, and they're just nowhere to be found. They have a couple of like still purchasable, like the wolves, and Ragnar Blackmane is a pretty cool model, but that's about it. Unfortunately, I would like them a lot more if some of their characters were back, like how the Blood Angels has a lot of their characters back. But they haven't had their codex yet.
Well, they still haven't received their 10th edition update.
Yeah, they haven't had it yet, so I'm pretty optimistic, but as of right now, they're a 2 for me. And for the rules, I like them, but I just know I would forget about what I'm actually supposed to do and then not get stronger and then feel bad. So I gave them a 2, but I could be persuaded to a 3 if it actually works in-game, like it's doable.
Yeah.
That will take us to our last one for today, I would say. The last of the core Space Marine group.
Yep.
God, GW, Games Workshop, that is.
The space racists.
I want to say something way worse, but I won't. We need an audience before I can get
They
them
are, though.
saying things.
Yeah, right. But also, hot damn, they are the space racists, the Black Templar.
Hilarious. I'm not sure if I love them or hate them.
They are
honestly.
mate, same. They are the epitome of your religious crusade.
Yeah.
After the Horus Heresy, Rabute Gilliman's like, oh, by the way, guys, we got to limit our numbers unless we're crusading. So they turned around and went, well, we're always crusading then, just because.
Yeah. Yeah. If I
No
remember
reason, just
correctly,
because.
their leader was so annoyed that their loyalty was even in question because of how well they defended humanity in the heresy, that they were like, you know what? I'm going to get all the boys, going to get all the vehicles, and we're going to go crusading. But then over the next 10,000 years, God, did they get a little unhinged.
Oh, yeah.
They fight everyone. They go after traitors. They go after aliens. They go after people who can do spells, because that might be a bad thing. Just can't be too careful, you know? But they have so many guys, and they're all in this black and white Knights Templar looking force, tabards and scrolls and crosses and swords and shields and holy regalia everywhere. Where your Dark Angels are more of a gothic theme, these guys are just straight up medieval. They barely even run tanks. Even the gameplay doesn't really let you run tanks. But they do have some pretty cool characters. They're also all space races. But I don't think there's much to actually really be said about these guys.
I would agree. I don't
think
much to really be said about them.
There's the visual component. There's that little crusading tidbit, but that's kind of their whole identity. They did have a book.
And that's...
yeah, you can go. I don't mind.
Definitely what I kind of summarized in their lore as well, in the lore category, is they just made crusading their entire personality.
Yeah. They did have a pretty cool book, which is called Hell's Reach, where one of their named characters you can get as a model defended to the last man against invading orc army. And it's a very well written book. It really looks into their whole rationality of the chapter, their sort of twisted morality. They want the glory of being these crusaders. They want their deeds to sort of be remembered, but if they fall in battle, they don't really mind, because their thousands of other Black Templar brethren will continue the fight. They realize that this fight is never going to end, and they've made this sort of peace with it. And I think that's pretty cool. And their playstyle's kind of a blend of the Blood Angels and the core Space Marines. They love to get into melee, but they love to decide how and when they do that. And I think that's kind of cool, a little blending of two styles. But do you want to give your final comments on Black Templars, or do you have more to add there?
Final comments. Well, we'll go through the slag ratings. So I gave them a 2 for stories. They kind of just feel like Dark Angels, but worse. They're less unique. They're very samey. And they're just that religious ideology to the max, right?
Yeah.
For lore, I gave them a 2 as well, because again, they kind of just do the same thing. 3, there's still a space for... Oh, sorry. Accessibility, I gave them a 3. Again, they're still Space Marines. You can't really go below a 3 for Space Marines, because you just have so many options. I'm hoping that with the range release that they will get this edition, they might feel a little bit more divergent, a bit more unique. And then for gameplay, I gave them a 2 because, again, they just don't feel unique.
That's very fair.
For a total of a 9.
For a total of 9. I was a little more favorable on them. I like them just slightly more than the Space Wolves. But I'm honestly a little conflicted. I'm not sure how much I actually genuinely like them, or if I just like them enough because they're quite similar to things I do like. They are very visually just fine. I gave them a 3. It's cool that this style exists. Their lore is 2. There are other stories out there, but they're very much copy-pasted characters from what I can tell. Die, heretic, and that's the story. The characters and a couple of their unique infantry did get like entirely updated in 9th edition, so pretty recently. Before that, no models since 3rd edition. So that's quite promising. You can buy everything that the range offers, unlike Space Wolves. So I gave them a 4. You know, there's a lot you can do with them at this point. Hopefully they get more. Maybe a whole crusading fleet, just the whole spaceship in orbit. But anyway, I gave them a 3 for gameplay, just because they blended something I thought was already cool. Just didn't do it as interestingly enough. So that totals, I think, 12 if I can math, which is okay.
Yep.
That's
above average.
That's above average. Just above average, Black Templar. That's going to conclude, I think, our selection of faction slagging today. There is other Space Marine-ish factions that we'll get into in likely the next episode. We covered a sort of an introduction for the most popular group of factions in the game, Space Marines, and the 4 sort of supplementive armies to core Space Marines. I would say next time we talk about the rest of the Imperium chapters, and we'll likely be able to get through them a bit quicker because we don't have to sort of explain the actual diversity between them as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're a bit more stock standard, obvious, different. It's not what are these guys different from the last guys we talked about?
Yeah, we'll have soldiers, we'll have nuns with guns, we'll have super soldiers. There's more to come, and we'll likely then go and cover the aliens and the bad boys after that. But I hope you all have enjoyed listening to our silly little voices. Thank you very much for listening. The follow-up to this, the rest of the Imperium, will likely be anywhere from a few days to a week or so after this will go out. I would like to say, we'll see how that goes. Thank you for listening. We are not sponsored. We do not have a Patreon. You can't really find us on Instagram. So we don't have to shill you anything. Just hope to see you again. Any other final remarks there, Johnny?
Find what you enjoy about the hobby and really let it do its thing, because this hobby is great. It's amazing. And there's parts of the hobby that I've enjoyed more than I thought I would. And there's always something for everyone. Just have fun.
Yeah. On the back of that, there are no wrong choices. You can play whatever you want. You can paint whatever you want. There is so much support for every one of these things within the community. You'll be right at home wherever you want to go. Enjoy Space Marine 2. We'll catch you next time, eh?
See you later, eh?